Hi there, Jonathan here, and I want to introduce you to this talk on uncertainty and how to navigate it with ease and joy, maybe. But first of all, a big thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this, to Glenn Harrison, our producer, to Rita Moran, our Mindful Movement leader, at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can get all that information on my website. I got a newsletter. Every now and then I send out all my best photography. There's a weekly as well. And this is all offered freely. I've received so much of these practices through teachers offering it freely. I'm inspired to do the same. And if you feel inspired to support me, thank you so much. Okay, this talk is part 2 of how to work with uncertainty. I mentioned last time how there's a quality of uncertainty that's stimulating and fun. There's a quality of uncertainty which is traumatizing. And it's so interesting. The other day, the last time I was paddling, there are these buckleheads which are so elusive. As soon as you get within a quarter mile, they scatter. Or if I get a little closer and I just pick up my phone, boom, they go. The other day, I was just sort of resting behind a rock because the wind was really intense, and a flock of buckleheads landed right near me. And I got some fun shots. Maybe I can insert them in here. The bottom line, though, is recognizing that uncertainty is the nature of reality. It's just the nature of reality. When you can cultivate a sense of steadiness, life is different. Very, very different. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Part 2. You don't have to listen to part 1 before you get this. This is a little more of the how-to. And I hope you find it helpful, and so many blessings in all you are drawn to. You might take a moment and make sure you're not going to be disturbed, and you might want to stretch, move your body in any way that feels appropriate for you. Kind of get your yayas out, so to speak. Get the wiggles out. And then take some time just to explore this transition. You might even look around, just pick out some objects nearby. Get a sense of the external world, kind of the extrinsic world, the visuals, the temperature of the air, the space around you. And then when you're ready, you can close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, let yourself begin to sense the inner world, the intrinsic world. How does all this feel? You might find it's helpful to bring your attention to your breath. It's certainly kind of a go-to for me. If you slow down and you deepen and lengthen, and if you smooth out the breath, just track everywhere you feel the breath on the inside. How intimately can you feel the breath? Where do you feel the breath the most predominant? Can you pause and acknowledge that space between the in-breath and the out-breath, that moment of stillness? Some people find it helpful to count. You might count to the count of 4 on the in-breath, and then to the count of 4 on the out-breath, and just maybe for the next minute or so, let all of your attention be on experiencing the breath on the inside, willful breath. Now you might like to explore altering the breath just a little bit. And if you're counting the breath, you can breathe into the count of 4, but exhale to the count of 5 or maybe 6. Just notice the effect. And if you're not counting, just let the exhalation be a little bit longer than the inhalation, and notice what that feels like. What do you feel? What do you notice? You may find that lengthening the exhalation tends to invite in a little more softening, a little more relaxation, and you might explore this. On the out-breath, what could relax? What could let go? And you might explore now either doing this with the breath or just with your attention, feeling from the inside out the muscles of your face. Could you let your face be expressionless? Feel the inside of your mouth. Sense, if you can, the volume of your lips. And you might explore if it's possible to relax your tongue. Could you let your tongue relax and fill your lower jaw? Is it possible to relax the root of your tongue down into your throat? And as you relax, just pay attention to the very subtle sense of softening, letting go. Could you relax or soften the throat? Feel your throat open. And you might sense from the inside out the shoulders and the shoulder blades, and tracking down the length of the arms, down through your elbows and down through your wrists. Feel the weight, the heaviness, the volume of your arms. And if you like, you might let the awareness flood into your palms, softening the palms, the backs of the hands, feeling the volume of your fingers and thumbs. And as you do so, is it possible to soften even more and feel any sense of pulse or tingling or subtle energy or vibration in the palms and fingers and thumbs? Feel now the length and the volume of your legs from the hips down to the knees down through the ankles, the volume of your feet and the soles of your feet. What could relax? What could soften? And now sensing into the belly, the lower back and the buttocks. Is there anything here that could let go? Anything here that could soften? You might just simply now notice again the experience of the breath on the inside. And let your attention simply rest with the inflow and the outflow of breath. Or if you prefer, you might focus on the sounds. And for these next few minutes, when you notice the mind naturally doing its thing, generating thought, commentary, could you very gently bring your attention back to the feeling of breath? to the experience of sound vibrations. As you soften again and again and receive the moment directly through the senses, you might also sense who you are as the observer, the witness of what's happening. This quality of non-judging awareness, unblinking awareness. Neither grasping nor pushing away, but just simply here, awake. A sense of allowing, letting be. There is a willful quality in meditation of actively, consciously bringing your attention back to your anchor, to the here and now. There is another element of watching the flow of things as the witness, like watching a river passing by. And yet another quality is this quality of simply letting be. And you might explore in the next minute or so, what is it like to let everything be exactly as it is? Exploring the following question: who are you in the absence of wanting life any different than how it is right now? Who are you in the absence of desire itself? You might very gently deepen your breath and just take a few moments to sense the quality of presence right now. Letting your body begin to move or shift or change in any way that feels good, and taking all the time you need for your transition. Welcome back. A few decades ago, I got to have a conversation with Dr. Oliver Ragnarsson. He was a doctor and a healer who lived in Reykjavik, Iceland, who in his youth had studied with Carl Jung. I was doing a project at that time that involved interviewing healers and intuitives. I was fascinated by those who could shift the framework of their consciousness and tap into intuition or higher knowing,
those who could hold the space for healing for others. And at that time in my life, I had the incredible gift of spending a fair bit of time in Iceland. And Iceland is an amazing country. There's such a high degree of sensitivity, a cultural acceptance of subtle energies and alternative views of things. My first experience with this was I was on the road with my friend Jon August, and we were driving down the road. It was straight, and then suddenly the road went around a pile of rocks and then just kept going straight again. And I said, what was that? And he goes, oh, fairies live there. When they put the roads in, the local people said they needed to avoid that spot. I thought, really? He said, yeah. And what they found is that when they ignore what the locals say about the fairies, about these energies, and they just blast through, that they have all these equipment failures and all these horrible things happen. So now they just listen to what the locals say. And so the roads will go around these, like, whatever you call them, energy vortexes or fairy homes or anything like that. Anyway, that's just such a remarkable quality of Iceland. I absolutely love it, and I love the people there. And Jon was so kind in that he set me up to speak with Dr. Ragnarsson, who was a doctor and really renowned for his wisdom, for his healing, and for his insights. So I was asking him about how does he shift his consciousness in a way that allows him to be so present and tap into other levels of knowing. One thing that I wanted to mention from that conversation was about his time with Dr. Carl Jung. And he asked him about the survival of the human species. And he said that Dr. Jung told him that humanity will continue, but in the coming decades there would be immense challenges and great suffering. And I guess that's kind of a safe bet in terms of predictions. Great challenges and immense suffering lie ahead. It's pretty much true about the human experience. But there's something about it being very poignant right now, because there's a lot of stress in our culture right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, and this talk is a continuation of what it means to surf the waves of uncertainty. Not necessary you listen to the first talk. I'll give you a little summary. One of them is around taking refuge in the present moment. The mind is always hallucinating around the past and around the future. And a big part of the practice is around bringing yourself back to the experience of here and now. We do this through the breath. We do this by paying attention to the senses. When you just open your awareness to right now, just to notice the visuals around you, to feel the palms, feel the air against your skin. Open your awareness to sound vibrations, to smell, to taste. When you turn your attention to the experience, there's a certain refuge there. The phrase that Thich Nhat Hanh would offer quite a bit. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware of breathing out. There's a refuge there in present moment awareness. I also talked in this former talk about taking refuge in the witness, about being the observer. This whole idea of how imagining that you are sitting by a stream, and the stream is everything that changes, and one of the streams is the stream of sensations, just sense data. Another is the sensation of, the experience of thought, the commentary that arises from sensation, the whole limbic system, emotions, states of consciousness, everything that's changing. And when we do this in our practice, we recognize that we're not our thoughts, but we're the one who's listening. And that can be a very powerful refuge when we're in the midst of uncertainty. Another quality is to take refuge in equanimity, to cultivate steadiness, to really begin to see into the mechanical aspect of our brains, of how we process information, how we build stories, and to ask ourselves, can I identify what's happening right now? And can I be with it? Can I let it be? These are simple practices, but the most profound practices I know of. So what I'd like to explore with you in the following is, and I like to think sometimes this is sort of like taking refuge. It's like it becomes like a haven. Taking refuge in wisdom and clear seeing. Taking refuge in the heart and compassion. And taking refuge into what I would call kind of pure presence. And finally, taking refuge in skillful actions. So we'll see how far we get through this. It has been on my mind a lot. Tara was working on a talk around the election, and she said, well, how do you think you'll react if the election goes the other way? And I said, well, how do I hope I react? I said, I hope I react like a stoic. That is to say, to take refuge in reality. It's not what I feel, but what's true. And I hope I remember that this pattern that we're in culturally has repeated itself through history. And that right now, all across the planet, any incumbent government is voted out because of the dissatisfaction and the anxiety on the culture. And how when there's greater fear, we tend to move toward autocracy. I hope I remember all that. I hope I remember that this has happened to countless people. How did people respond in Germany when they saw the shift to the hard right, or in Argentina, or Spain, or Italy? I hope I remember the 3,000-year view, the 10,000-year view. And it kind of opens up this question, because obviously my limbic system we're doomed. But taking refuge in wisdom is, what do I know for sure? What's true? And that becomes a very interesting question. What do you absolutely know for sure? You know, the classic story of the horse that runs away, or the horse that arrives, good news, bad news. The son breaks his leg. Oh, bad news. They're sweeping through and taking young men into the army, but he has a broken leg, so they leave him. Oh, good news. Who knows? So what is wisdom? And I think of wisdom as seeing what's absolutely true. And in this age of such polarity, there's such an attachment to points of view. It seems to me like everything has gotten more tribal. It's almost like a football game where you cheer when your team wins and you boo when the other team wins. And the question is, how do we break out of this small-minded, tribal quality of consciousness? I've been listening to a guy named Chris Voss. He was an FBI negotiator. Beautiful stuff. He's on YouTube if you want to look for him. And he's done a lot of moderating conflicts. And one rule that he employs when people are supercharged, he basically says this: you can say anything you want here, but first you have to reflect back what the person who spoke before you said in such a way that they say, yeah, you got it. How brilliant. You can say anything you want, but first you've got to repeat back what the other person said to the point where they say, yeah, that's exactly what I said. And when he employs that, he said it's incredible the level of conversations people can have. And to me, that's wisdom. It's not my preference, it's not my story, it's what's actually true. And of course, much of mindfulness, or paying attention on purpose, is just this. It's about coming into contact with reality. And then the very deep inquiry, what do you know to be true? And I'm finding myself, as I'm in a kick where I'm I'm deepening my practice, lengthening my sitting, of reminding myself, I'm really not sure I know anything. I don't think anyone really knows what anything is. And while that may seem nihilistic, at least it opens the space for more information and learning. It makes space for curiosity. So cultivating wisdom is getting off the stick of your own point of view and exploring what's true. But as you well may know, that's just one wing of the mindfulness bird. The other wing of the mindfulness bird is compassion. It's the awakened heart, wisdom and the awakened heart. When we are in pain, we get really small. And I had an experience the last 6 weeks of getting COVID and then getting pneumonia on top of it. And it was weeks and weeks and weeks of extreme unpleasantness. And in the middle of it, when I was diagnosed with pneumonia and I saw that I had another 4 to 6 weeks to recover from that, to be honest, I just spiraled down. On top of it, lack of sleep. And in that spinning down, I was moving into self-pity. I thought, my God, is this depression? I don't think of myself as a depressed person, but this is a kind of a hopelessness. And I saw my attachment to being a productive person, and I saw my attachment to my story about being really healthy. I saw my stuff around being productive as part of my identity and all that being taken away. And in the middle of my misery and my wallowing and my self-pity, I thought of my good friend Lynn Gordon. Her dad was one of the first people to come down with COVID in New York City. He was put in intensive care and a ventilator, and he never got out of intensive care. He was isolated, and she had to share her final words to her dad via text. They texted back and forth. And as I opened myself to that experience, there was a shift for me of compassion for Lynn, compassion for her family, for her dad. What would that be like for him to be isolated with a ventilator and only available to chat with family on text? It was a realization that other people feel this too. And a lot of people have felt a lot worse than I have. And in that softening, there was more of a sense of allowing. And now when people say, oh yeah, I've had COVID twice, or I've had COVID 3 times, my heart is so much more present to their experience. There's so much more empathy. So when navigating the waves of uncertainty, accessing the heart is so important. And one of the shortcuts is reflecting on gratitude. So if you don't mind, I'd like to offer a roughly 90 to 120 second reflection on gratitude. If you like, you can close your eyes, or you don't have to close your eyes, but it can be helpful. And if you think of today, or maybe yesterday and today, can you bring into mind 3 things that spark some gratitude, no matter how small? Can you take a little time here just to reflect on the small pleasures of life? Maybe a warm cup of coffee, or sunlight, or the sound of laughter. You might also breathe, see if you can amplify the feeling of this. And you might ask yourself, what is one thing you can appreciate right now? And notice any felt sense as you've just sustained tension on this for maybe 75 seconds. And is it possible that even in uncertainty that you can find gratitude and you can find beauty? If you like, you can open your eyes. This is such a powerful tool that honestly I forget all the time. Our natural tendency is to focus on what's wrong, the built-in negativity bias. But when you shift to gratitude, you shift to looking for the good, from lack to abundance. And just the small joys helps you find balance and resilience. And what I find is, when I respond to suffering from a sense of lack, from a sense of fear, there's a certain result. When I can respond to suffering with a primed heart, it's different. The issues are the same, but the attitude adjustment that comes with gratitude, it makes a big, big difference. It opens us to possibility. So this is about taking refuge in compassion, taking refuge in the wise heart, and cultivating that by training yourself to look for the good. Just in the midst of uncertainty, is it possible to find gratitude? Is it possible to ask yourself, is there anything I can appreciate right now? The next element of navigating uncertainty is taking refuge in presence, and kind of like pure, unfiltered presence. I have a good friend who is a leader in a really big industry that's very, very complex. He manages a whole bunch of people and gigantic budgets. And he's a really interesting guy because he gets stuff done. He really knows how to get stuff done. And he's in an incredibly stressful situation. My nervous system could not bear the stress that he bears every day. But he has a practice. He has a meditation practice. He sits in meditation every morning. He drives into New York City with the radio off, driving as spiritual practice. And he does retreats. And as we've had a long-term relationship, a lot around practice, he observed how he is less and less caught in the drama around him. He's just less identified. And an interesting thing around being less identified is the concern is, am I not feeling? Am I indifferent? But as we kind of explored, it's actually, there's just more of a sense of non-reactivity. And he's able to make decisions faster because he's less caught up in attachment to the outcome. I've recently increased my meditation practice. I'm now sitting for 40 minutes every day. And I'm tracking what it's like, because it's a kind of a dramatic shift up for me. I was more of doing kind of a maintenance practice, but for me, with all the uncertainty and all the waves that go with it, I realized I need to commit. And what I've noticed is, as I've increased my time in meditation, that I go through certain stages in that meditation. And in particular, I use the Insight Timer app. So I do 40 minutes with 10-minute bells. And generally, depending on my mood, I kind of follow the strategy of what I call focus, flow, and let go. The first part of the practice is around kind of the willful practice of coming back and arriving, relaxing, coming back, arriving, and relaxing. The bell's there to kind of remind me like, oh, well, maybe now I can sort of like open more into just the witnessing flow. But I always take time at the end. That last 10 minutes was dedicated to just being, letting go of letting go of effort. And it's been fascinating for me. And I'll say a little bit more about that. But I thought, just as a little review, again, short little inquiry. Won't take long. If you like, you can close your eyes or not. You might bring your awareness into your breath and just notice how experiencing the breath is this opportunity to take this deep dive into awake sensations. Just a few slow, deep breaths. And if you would, you might just lengthen your breath just long enough where you find it pleasurable and engaging. You're not straining, but you're experiencing the breath. And just for the next, let's say 8 breaths, how intimately can you stay with the breath? And when you lose the breath, which is natural, of course, just bring it right back. And now, if you would, sense who you are as the observer, as the witness of change. And notice if you can widen and broaden your awareness to be more aware of what we could call flow. Shifting sensations, moods, stories, and states. Like watching clouds. And now you might shift your attention to letting be, letting everything be as it is. This realm where there's no good, there's no bad. And ask yourself, what could relax or let go right now? And what could relax or let go even more than that? And in the absence of any effort, what do you feel? What do you notice? And now take a moment just to notice the quality of presence, anything that may have shifted in the last 90 seconds, 2 minutes. If you like, you can open your eyes or you can remain with them closed. Part of my sense of surfing the waves of uncertainty is more consciously looking for ways that I can plug into presence, if you will. I now sit for 40 minutes, and it's really interesting to extend my sitting because I find myself going through the stages of kind of struggling to focus, opening to flow, but I always take time to explore what we could call effortless presence, of just simply resting and being. And what I find is the more I let go into just presence, something gets nurtured. As Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said, you water the root and enjoy the fruit. It's a little cliche, but there's something to it. And it might be something to consider in your life. How might you build in time to simply consciously rest in presence? So that's about sitting back, resting in presence, but it leads to the final thing I'd like to share with you is skillful action. Skillful means. What are the actions you can take that will help you cultivate more steadiness and more equanimity in your life? This is the classic Zen story. A man is traveling across a field and he encounters a tiger. He runs, the tiger's running after him. He comes to a precipice. He catches hold of a wild vine and he swings himself over the edge. The tiger is sniffing at him from above, just out of reach of the paws. And the man who's trembling, hanging onto the vine, looks down where way down below there's another tiger waiting to eat him. Only the vine is sustaining him. And two mice, one white and one black, little by little start to gnaw away at the vine. The man sees a luscious strawberry near him, and grasping the vine with one hand, he plucks the strawberry with the other, and how sweet the strawberry tastes. There's a lot to unpack around that story. Life pretty much shows up as stimulus response. Something happens and you react. Awareness can open up that gap a little bit. And in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of change, in the midst of all this stuff happening beyond your control, what is the correct balance? You probably know the story of the Japanese fighter from World War II who spent like the next 20 years hiding in the jungle. He didn't know that the war was over. And they found his commander was retired for many, many years, who finally found him and told him, hey, it's okay. There are others who jump into their first impulse of reactivity. Others who look for a monastery, shut the doors. How do you respond? And for myself, my sense is that, as Carl Jung said, there are great challenges ahead. There will be suffering ahead. And for me, I want to feel connected to Source. I want to feel connected to presence like never before. And I always find it helpful to reflect on the observances, the practices I might engage into, and the restraints, kind of the conscious renunciation of other actions. And so for me, I'm increasing my sitting practice. In order to meet the challenges ahead, I always love the cliche, and cliches are usually true, the whole idea of filling my cup to overflowing. Focusing on my health, my core vitality, training myself to look for the good, to look for possibilities, to look at how I can best serve, and to actively explore what I can let go of, what I'm holding on to, what's holding me back. And my sense is if I do this, I will be able to cultivate a deeper keel in the water. I may be able to more actively, mindfully, consciously respond to the challenges that lie ahead. But there's also really looking at the restraints. What am I not going to do? And again, part of that's reflecting on what am I holding on to that I could let go of? What am I clutching that's not necessary to hold on to? That's got to do with physical stuff, emotional stuff, my history, my habits. To do a real assessment of what drains me. What are the mental distractions that pull me away from what's most important? What are the habits that just don't serve? What emotional baggage am I holding on to? It also has to do with doing an inventory of how I spend my time. And what drains me? Like, what distracts me? And what do I do that expands and enlivens and opens me again to the mystery? part of my restraints is looking at my beliefs. I find great refuge in, I don't know anything for sure. It's just a nice little mantra. Don't know consciousness has been super, super helpful for me. And so the question for you is, given the waves of uncertainty that are sure to come, what are the practices and observations that would most support you? What are the restraints? What might you refrain from that would give you more energy, more vitality, more of a sense of presence? And you might just reflect on the following question. What one thing would most help you cultivate more awareness and aliveness in your life? What one thing would help you cultivate more awareness and aliveness in your life? For me, it was around upping my meditation practice. One of my teachers, Swami Kripalu, gave the analogy of the mala beads, like if you imagine a string of pearls. If you just pick up one pearl, the rest of the string of pearls will come with it. And this, I think, is really important. What's one thing, and if you do that one thing, everything is going to come along with it. For me, it's upping my practice. That sense of coming in the presence, cultivating wisdom, cultivating compassion, has helped me to open to a greater sense of curiosity, open to a sense of a little bit more responsiveness to life, I think. And we'll see how it goes. But I think you are that person hanging on the vine. There's a tiger above, a tiger below, the mice gnawing at the vine. How do you want to live so you can actually savor the strawberry? Is it possible? So in the midst of uncertainty, it seems the refuges are around remembering what's true, taking refuge in what's true, remembering that it's possible to cultivate a heart that can hold anything, remembering to let go of the past and the future and be fully present, alive in the senses. Remembering that some actions can be skillful and can help you to cultivate more steadiness and more equanimity. And the key word here is remembering. In Pali, it's sati. The capacity to remember what's most important. That capacity to remember the 3,000-year view, the 10,000-year view, the 50,000-year view. This, to me, is an essential part of our practice. In the midst of everything that's changing, the question is there something that doesn't change? It's a beautiful pointing out instruction I first heard from Adyashanti. And you might, if you like, just to close your eyes or just to kind of, in a sense, just notice what's changing. And here you'll sense the stream, sensations, thoughts, stories, moods, emotions, states. And is there anything you can detect that doesn't change? In these final moments, you might reflect. As you sense change in your life, what advice do you have to give yourself? What would you need to cultivate a sense of steadiness in your life? And if you had that, what would that feel like? What would that be like? If you like, you can deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you found this helpful, and I deeply wish you well. May your keel, the keel of your boat, be deep. And may you have all that you need to support you in navigating this life with as much joy as possible, to really taste the strawberries when they show up in your life. Take good care.